Hello. I'm gonna give everyone a moment to kind of jump on. I know it is Monday and some of you guys might be catching the replay, and that's just as fine as well. Definitely make sure to ask any questions that you have at any point in the comments, whether you're watching it live or the replay. Super excited to be here inside of this little space here in our social world, right? Thanks to Sarah for having me as well in her space. I absolutely love the goal of rediscovering your paper stash. I think every scrapbooker at one point or another, we all need a little bit of motivation and tips and ideas around this, and Sarah does an amazing job at helping all of us to do that with her prompts and her ideas and all of that. So I think it's fair to say, like, if you've been scrapbooking for a while, like, right, raise of hands, like, we have our fair share of paper stash. I know for me, so let me first introduce myself. I'm Susan Budge. I am actually the co-founder of Kiwi Lane. And if we haven't met, hello. And I love scrapbooking. I also love paper. So I'm just gonna think that most of us share that and we have that in common. So actually, you know, if you're not familiar with Kiwi Lane, we have come up with a method and a product to help you to kind of simplify some of the steps when you sit down, you know, to scrapbook. And we call the method itself Play to Create, because we've noticed as we, you know, pull out some tools, which are our designer templates, that we also created to support that tangible play, it sparks inspiration. When we came up with this product though, and this method, it was kind of evolved around using our paper stash, right? Not just the paper stash, but the beautiful patterns in the paper stash. And I definitely remember back in like 2008, okay, we're talking quite a few years ago, before even my scrapbooking experience had transformed through this process and these products. But I remember at that point really being kind of a little unsure how to mix pattern papers, and it was kind of always a test and trial. Every time I would try to use patterns or pieces of random papers out of my stash or things like that, it was a test and trial. Sometimes I got it right, sometimes I didn't. And so over the years, because of that like observation and that realization that it's kind of like give or take, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, we started to evaluate just our paper stash, right? Just like what to kind of take from those moments. And we came up with this formula, this proven formula we have used over a decade at this point, way over a decade at this point. And so that's kind of what I wanted to share with you guys. This is a free guide, by the way. This is something we are just sharing with any scrapbooker that wishes to have access to this information that we have put together and related to things to kind of segment your paper based off of the type of patterns it is, and to use this formula as a go-to approach when mixing and matching pattern papers on your layout. Now, evolution of paper, like I have talked about this, we have actually lots of YouTube videos on this. So here's like a short version of that, the concept of the evolution of paper. For me, and maybe you guys are gonna hear kind of your story or similar story in my story that I'm gonna share with you, is that, you know, you've gone through these paper pads, right? Well, actually, no, rewind. It was like single sheets. I remember when I would go to the store, or if I was like shopping at a expo or something, right? Wherever, you know, I was buying my paper, and it was just eye candy. It was like, ooh, that pattern's cute. Ooh, that pattern's cute. Ooh, that pattern is cute. And it was just kind of this random single sheet purchasing. Well, okay, that's great, right? These beautiful patterns that are so eye candy that you're like, oh, I'll buy it, but not really quite knowing what you're going to prepare it with at the time, or not quite sure what you're gonna do with that, right? Then of course we had this phase where like paper pads came out, and you're like, okay, great, it comes in a collection, like this should help, right? And there's two different scenarios that I've often found in pattern papers and paper collections or paper pads. One is that you don't love all the patterns, right? And sometimes they were single-sided. I love that. Sometimes they weren't, not so great, because if you didn't love that sheet, there wasn't an alternative to the use of that sheet, right? But then also I've noticed that the paper collections, the pads or packs, right? When we went through that kind of paper evolutional phase, thinking, okay, this should help, like take some of that weight, right? Like do a little bit of the heavy lifting for you, because the paper designers like did all the work for you, right? Or tried to do it in a collection. Anyways, well, what I noticed is that then there was a lot of busy patterns all kind of merged together, because again, that sense of eye candy, and you know, you're like, okay, these are all cute, like I'll purchase this pack, but then you still have to do some of that legwork when you get the pack, and then you realize, okay, these are just all too busy. And I'm using terms like busy. We actually refer to those busy ones now as main sheets. And the thing is, like, you can't use tons of main sheets together, or you get this overwhelming, in my opinion, overwhelming page, right? And so it really is kind of this, again, formula that we realized, okay, these are the types of patterns that we need to look for. And it really helps because it breaks it down in a way that allows you to look at your paper stash, whether those are single sheets or paper packs or collections or pads that you have purchased, right? And break it down in ways that puts them into what we call layout kits. No matter what style, like whether you're scrapbooking a page that's like within the playtocreate Kiwi Lane designer templates, or you're using, you know, die cuts or other elements or whatever it is that your style is in scrapbooking, I think that this formula still applies to be able to look at your paper stash in a way that you can see and identify different patterns in different groups. And those groups actually, so again, this is all here in this handbook, but we broke it down, kind of an easy, quick guide here, and we're gonna go through pretty quickly the just kind of general scope of what this formula includes, but definitely make sure to download it, save it to your device, print it if you want to, check out our other YouTube videos. There's a lot more content related to this, and check it out. But basically what we break it down into is identifying the paper in and of itself into 5 different categories, really 4, I guess. 1, separating main patterns, like, right? Main patterns is a category of its own. Then you also have what we categorize as, I'm getting balloons. I think I'm doing something that like hand signal that's getting me balloons. Supporting patterns, okay? And that's a kind of a category of its own. And then we also, what we refer to as blenders or two-tone patterns. And I'm going to show an example of each one of these types of patterns that you most likely already have in your stash. And like I was sharing before, it's actually the combination of where you take one from the blender category, for example, or 2 or whatever, one from the supporting and one from the main. But if you keep them one at a time on a page, then that will allow you to have like more of that ease of feeling like the patterns are flowing with each other versus competing with each other, okay? If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'm gonna keep going and chatting about the paper and paper in general, okay? Because I love it. It's a great topic. And honestly, it's amazing what your paper stash can do for you just by using your pattern papers. Your patterns, the patterns inside of our papers, we fall in love with them so much is because they can really do a lot of the mood setting. I mean, clearly the mood setting, the accessorizing, the just the overall cohesiveness of the memory that you're reliving through what you're scrapbooking, right? And so it's really that beautiful combination of that creative expression and transforming that paper with your creative expression to scrapbook your precious life memories. Now, we don't want that to feel overwhelming. Scrapbooking, the process should not feel overwhelming. It should not feel like, I guess, less of, and I'm talking about myself now because like I said, fast forwarding or rewinding to about 2008, I did feel like I would finish a page and just feel like I'm not quite sure what's wrong with it. It's just not fixing. And so for me, when this formula, we started to really fine tune what it was when we liked pages or when it was like a little bit more overwhelming, it was because we either mixed two mains together or we didn't have enough of the supporting with the main patterns and so forth. All right. So let me give you an example, and I'll kind of keep sharing some tips that I've realized throughout the years on that process. I can tell you, for whatever it's worth, like I said, it's been more than a decade. It's actually going on, I think, 15 years that I've been, really taking advantage of the playtocreate method in my own scrapbooking experience, but also in this formula that we came to realization about using our paper stash. And I have noticed, and I just want every scrapbooker to experience this for themselves. It doesn't happen overnight, but that is that you can empty, your closet, so to speak, and you can see that paper stash diminishing little by little, and your finished pages, your finished albums increasing. So really decreasing the closet and increasing your finished albums is super satisfying and rewarding. And so if there's any way that we can help you to do that, I'm all for it. All for it, okay? So I have this really old paper that my daughter's just like sitting there laughing at me. Payback, it'll come back to her eventually. I have this old paper stash. Authentic, anyone? I love when I show like an old paper stash and someone's like, I have that same exact paper. And yeah, so super, 2013, it was an authentic paper pack. And this is one of those pads I'm talking about, right? Since then I've pulled it apart, but this is actually a good example. I have scrapbooked out of this, but as you can see, because of the pad concept, whoops, here we go. Still have quite a few of this pad that I'm still working through. Some patterns I possibly won't necessarily use because, like I said, that's the problem sometimes with those pads is you get sheets in there that you're like, no, like that's not one I would use. I will say though, everybody's style and everybody's interest in what patterns and things are different, and that's actually really great, right? We're not the same. And so what you are attracted to as far as a main pattern might be completely different than what I am attracted to. But let me give you a sense of what it means to be a main pattern in our definition, okay? Actually, my wallpaper is a good example of what it means to be a main pattern. So in this paper pad in and of itself, there is a few patterns in here that kind of qualify, I guess, so to speak, as that main pattern. And in the guide, we actually describe the main pattern is more themey, usually. It is definitely busier. Usually, if within a collection or a paper, it has all the color palettes represented. Not necessarily all the time, but for the most part, that pattern usually incorporates all of the colors from that palette inside of there. And this is why that's valuable in the main sheet, is because when you have a pattern that is representative of, say, a certain color palette, of a selection of a color palette, when we go to start layering and mixing other patterns or colors with this actually becomes that main sheet that we select becomes that source of reference. It's what we start pulling from to build our other, or make our other choices. Pulling this yellow out, pulling the light, you know, mint teal out, you know, maybe a little bit of the black or the gray in here, things like that from that pattern. But in the guide, we also do some other examples, but that color scheme really is kind of the focus. It focuses on colors, it focuses on theme. You know, if you're doing, like, for example, a Halloween page, then you'll have a pattern that is more Halloween, right? Actually, I have one right here. Super cute pattern. I just picked it up, right? Super cute pattern here. Super fun. This is Echo Park's Spooktacular cute pattern. So this is a good example of a themey main sheet. And so now here's the thing. This main sheet, it really is, there's only, this color palette has peach, mint, black, white. Those are the colors there, okay? I might do like coincide hand in hand. So main sheet, we're looking for something that is busier. These both are kind of in my book here. I would say both of these are a main pattern. You might think, oh, well, I can layer those two together, but what will happen is, again, they can slightly compete depending on how you're layering them on your page, okay? So let me go ahead with, say, this one. All right, so I'll actually probably come back and explain that here in a moment, because this collection had a lot of main patterns in it, I will say. The next is the category of supporting patterns, okay? So the way we define supporting patterns and is kind of, once you have that main sheet, the one that you're most drawn to, really. If you're looking at a collection or you're at the store shopping, whatever it is, if you are drawn to one specific pattern, that is usually one that's pretty affirmative that maybe that's the main pattern for you. And then we're gonna draw from that main pattern for our selection, or our supporting and our blenders. Okay, so again, those three different types of categories that help with that. Supportings are usually what we define as more subtle patterns. Not necessarily subtle, it's more like geometric patterns. This is where, like, again, not too themey, not too formal, like stripes, polka dots, chevrons, just like light flower patterns or things like that, right? Those are where your supporting comes into play. Not so much, I keep doing little things and it's doing signs. So here's an example. So see this pattern? See now how that kind of really pulls in and supports this, and this pattern just happens to have a rim around it, how it's designed. But this pattern right here in the middle, it's a little bit more subtle. It has not necessarily all the patterns in it. And you can see how when you pair it with a supporting, the mood can change. Let me show you another example of maybe if you pulled in another paper from the same collection. Okay, hold on. Let me pull this one out. Okay, you could even go something like this. That mood's gonna shift. And I do think that the supporting really adds to the overall setting that you're working towards. So again, if I was gonna do something like this, supporting and main, that could work, right? And then you have this option, supporting and main. But now let me flip it back to a main. So something that's not more universal or something like that. It kind of just builds a little bit more of a busyness in that regards. Here's another one actually that's more in the main preference. I'll give you one more example of that comparison. You can, again, that mood changes. So often what I'm doing when I'm making decisions, selecting and mixing and match pattern papers, I am layering them together. So see, So now we have, again, another one that we would categorize based off of the definitions and things that we put in that, wherever the link is, this free guide that I'm using as a reference. And it has helped me so much to use up my paper stash, but also to finish cohesive pages that towards the end, I'm not doing the guesswork or the testing and the trial. This formula that I'm sharing with you has proven over and over and over again to transform my paper selections based off of these, picking one from each sort of category and combining them on a page. Again, however that is that you choose to scrapbook your page, whatever style, whatever sketch, whatever idea, whatever little products that you put inside and, you know, add to your overall design. Here's what I know: to scrapbook, especially, you know, more of the traditional with paper way, you need paper, you need pictures, at least, right? So that's why it's so valuable to really kind of look at your paper in a way that does a lot of the work for you. So does a lot of the mood setting and embellishing for you, but also mixing patterns in a way that you will feel happy with and confident, happy and confident with that finished result, right? And still allowing your pictures and your moments to not be swallowed up necessarily with the busyness of the patterns, but to really stand out and shine as you relive them. So again, this would just be too much for me. I don't know about you guys, but it would be too much if I started to layer those together. But I followed the rules or the formula here that, you know, we kind of define a supporting and a main and what makes each of them be strong and stand on their own, but at the same time work together. So definitely make sure that those are contrasting patterns, right? And you want kind of that nice, just working with that main pattern. So I always go from my main pattern selection to my supporting selection. And I just kind of layer it here together and I see what mood do I start preferring. That's actually quite cute. I think that's cute. I don't mind the black though either. I think it depends, again, preference, what preference you have. This one again, because especially within the older patterns that you probably have in your stash, this was pretty common. Some paper lanes still do it. But you either work around it or you work it into your design. That's where the creative part comes when you sit down to scrapbook. Super fun. So there was that third type of pattern that we often talk about. And that is what we call blenders or two-tones. And blenders or two-tones, in my opinion, are very much what helps tone down and blend those selections together as you play with layering. I love layering on a page. I love that the designer templates and playtocreate system are actually literally designed to spark your creativity as you play your way to finish your page. And layering is one of those things. And I love it because if you are just using your paper to embellish your page in a way, or at least most of it, then you can add some really fun layering options and mix and match layering techniques and styles and designs together. But you don't get that necessarily bulkiness because you're doing and accomplishing layering with your pattern papers. So I love layering. I've always said, you know, if you feel like something's missing from your page, add another layer. But usually I'm adding that other layer within the papers that I picked. And because I'm having the combination of these patterns represented, main pattern, supporting pattern, blending patterns on my page, because I'm having them represented, it actually helps me to be able to utilize as many layers or less layers on my page that I'd like. So I really love that. Okay, so blenders, this other category, we call it blenders or two-tones. We merge those together because a blender, actually, when you're looking at your papers and you're like, well, what kind of pattern is this, right? And again, these are just the names that we refer to our patterns as. We refer them If I looked at a pattern, I'd be like, that's a main pattern. If I looked at a pattern, I'd be like, that's a supporting pattern. If it's a blender, you'll see patterns like this where they're, of course, not themey. They're not, you know, too overwhelming. But a blender is a pattern that is created by taking the same color. So in this case, like this mint teal green, right? And you take 1 or 2 shades lighter than that initial color that you're using, and you layer that on top. You're just blending the same color, just 2 tones, either higher or lower or whatever, on top of that. And so this is actually not a white on the polka dot. It's a light version of that mint color. So that's a really good blender in this case. 2 tones. Here, I have a little scrap of this sitting here. This is a 2-tone. It's taking 2 color palettes and working them together. You'll see this often, of course. This could even be, I guess, in a way considered a 2-tone. It's just the pattern itself, it seems to be a little bit busier, which is why I kind of utilized it as maybe a supporting selection. Oh, here's another one. Okay. You could say this too is a well, it is a 2-tone. It's black and teal. So it's 2 colors combined on a thing, but not really more than that. You don't really see too many more than 2 colors, at least not what we recommend. These are guidelines, by the way. I don't mean them to be rules or anything, because rules, especially when it comes to creative, it is free game. Like, it's however you choose to be. But if you're looking for a little bit of a framework to work inside of to help you to get to some decision making quicker or faster, or maybe even just to really rediscover your paper stash, right? When you're looking at that paper stash and you're rediscovering it and you're saying, oh, okay, like I see now, like I see the main patterns and I see those supporting patterns and I see those blenders in my paper stash. Then taking those and merging them together, I have found, this is what I do next. I select those packs and I put them together in what we refer to as layout kits, okay? So I take this formula, I follow the directions here, I pick some background sheets. I love doing a 2-page layout, preferably probably about 85% of the time when I scrapbook. The other part is I do occasionally do 1-pagers or things like that, right? If I have random 2 or 3 pictures, then I'll do a 1-pager. But we do recommend those 2 sheets for your backgrounds, and we pull from the Blender 2-tone category for background sheets. This could also be cardstock, by the way, and we mentioned that here in this guide. Then on top of that, we recommend 1 main pattern, because again, like, you're just pulling one to kind of be that mood setter for you. And you don't want that mood to maybe like compete with another main pattern. And then we recommend 1 supporting. If on the back of the supporting, you don't have also another great supporting pattern, then we recommend maybe you want to pull in 2 supporting patterns, depending on your preference as far as how much you love to layer with paper. Okay, so again, this guide, this free guide that I'm talking about, breaks that down more in a more digestive way. And then we recommend, if you like to mat your photos, you might want to throw in another sheet. So giving, picking 5 to 6 sheets, using this guideline to help you to mix and match those patterns together inside of your own customized kit. Again, if you were at that phase where you were like picking sheets, you're gonna have a lot of fun, unique kits as you pull these together. That was definitely my experience when I started to really rediscover my paper stash. And, we often use the term like shopping from your paper stash, things like that. I started to do this method where I would pull them together into layout kits. And then what I would do is I would put them into these little Ziploc paper bags. And this is now ready for me when I have the time to sit down and scrapbook, or I'm going to a crop. And I pick a few of these kits that I've already coordinated together with this in mind. I grab some pictures that I want to scrapbook with it, or any other little things from my stash that I feel like we coordinate with this. And then I am able and ready to sit down and scrapbook, not be pulling out and searching through all of the papers, and then before you know it, you're just tired because you're just searching through your paper. Doing this little bit of prep work here and there previously, so that when you are in that creative mode, when you are ready to sit down and create a page, you have some sense of idea of what products are going to work together from your paper stash, okay? Like I said, if you're buying in collections, that's awesome. I think definitely more of the more recent collections, but you'll notice though that when you go through even collections from papers, from manufacturers, you know, there's still sometimes a lack of supportings, or a lack of sometimes blenders, patterns being representative. But I don't think that you won't find them in your own paper stash, probably. Most likely you will. I knew that to be true for me, and then usually if I didn't have something, then I'd go to the store and, you know, be like, I'd have my little list, shopping list, like, okay, I need a pattern that is a good background for this color palette, and I would just like take pictures of my paper packs that I needed to finish up. That has been a long time since then, because now for me, a lot of the time I use our paper packs that we built on this formula, but I'm always encouraging people to really take the same formula that we apply to our own paper to your own paper stash, so that you can really start using that up. Now, what is so great about that is that, like I said, I can sit down, I can scrapbook, I not shuffling through my papers nonstop all the time. I also can see kind of, I have this other, we can't see it, this other bucket here that is still random single sheets that haven't found a partner, that haven't found or been claimed, I guess you could say, in a completed layout kit. And so sometimes I'll still find myself putting some of these kits together. So just making a few of these and taking it in different phases, not at the same time you sit down to scrapbook, but maybe, you know, spending an evening or two just putting together these packs. Then the next time you sit down to scrapbook, I promise it really helps, because then you're like, oh, I have this already together, I have these pictures, I'm gonna start and get started. And it's really helped. It's really helped me be way more efficient when I sit down to scrapbook, which has resulted, again, in many completed pages at the same time. And going through my paper stash, because they go hand in hand. The more of your paper stash you're using, the more pages you're most likely finishing, right? And so it's super rewarding in both cases, So for me, I got these off of Amazon. These are just clear, like 13 by 12 and a half bags. I can share the link. Anyone just comment, tag me. I will share the link where I personally got these, because they worked great. And, you know, I've also recommended you can use the Totally Tiffany file page things here. Those are also great. I just knew for me initially, I had a lot of kits to put together through my paper stash. So those Ziploc bags really work, because you get like 100 in a pack thing. So, and I used them all, multiple of those too initially. But again, my papers are all sorted and organized in a way where they're combined and kind of with a plan in mind, and that is super nice to have. So I take those, I do that, and it actually really helped too. I know I kind of mentioned it, but if I go to a crop, oh boy, I think that's where I've also really mentioned a big difference in my scrapbooking experience is I do remember the times where I was like, I don't know what to bring, like, you know, and And it seems like every time you're going to crop, like life just gets busy. Like the week before, you have all good intentions to like get things completely organized, and it just seems to be crazy right before you're like, I'm gonna go take this me time and hang out with my, you know, fellow scrapbookers and friends. It never fails. At least for me, it doesn't fail. And so it's so nice to know that all that legwork, in some case, you know, in my paper kits that I've set aside some time to put those together, was done. So I was able to just be like, hey, let me just pull these out. I'll go figure out my pictures and put those in there. Within a few hours, I'm packed and I'm ready to go to the crop. And I'm not taking my whole kitchen sink anymore to the crop. So that's been really transforming for my scrapbooking experience as well. Would you be interested in me printing this and just using it start to finish for a video later this month? Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely can, Sarah. So I think I read your thing correctly. Let me know. Yes, Sarah, hands down. I would love that. You know, and again, it's such an interesting thing when you rinse and repeat, really showing that process over and over again, which is why something that we constantly share with everybody is just utilizing the framework of really, when you look at your paper stash, start seeing it just a little bit differently, like separating in your mind main patterns, supporting patterns, blender patterns, and that then you can just start picking one from each of those that coordinate together and then build out those kits, right? And kind of just build that down the road. So, well guys, I hope that these little insights have been super helpful, and I love the goal that Sarah has been here, just encouraging us all to rediscover our stashes, and in that really completing some pages too, right? Because like I said, they go hand in hand, and I just think it's a wonderful thing. It's so great, and I can only encourage us to use, but also to cut into those patterns. I think that's the other thing I hear often people say, like, oh, it's so cute, I can't cut into it. Like, cut the paper, cut it, transform it into a finished page, and let it be really something that your memories, every memory is special in my book. Every memory deserves a beautiful page. And if your best paper, if you're like, well, I want to wait for the best occasion, all I can tell you is that today is the day. So definitely cut into the pattern papers, put them to good use. And if there's anything I can do to help you, definitely just let me know, tag me in the comments. And it's great to be here with you guys today. And hopefully you download that guide. It's there for you to use. Feel free to share it, share the link with anybody that you think will help them as well. And I will see you guys in the comments then. All right, thank you. Talk to you guys later. Bye now.